Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our last day of the April 2023 Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council meeting. We are going to dive right in this morning to our business session, which is going to begin with a presentation from Dr. Paul Rago for the SSC. So we're going to get an SSC update from Dr. Rago. So Paul, if you're available and ready, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everybody. I will be presenting the material that's located behind Lucky tab number 13. It's a fairly lengthy report. I assure you I won't go into all the details of that, but next slide, please. I wanted to start with a little bit of a tribute to Lee Anderson. In March, this was the first meeting of the SSC where Lee was not present as a formal member. Of course, he served on the council and he taught many students and had a major impact on economic theory and fisheries management. So he had a very practical orientation to his academic work. And, you know, just to note, his intellect and humor will be sorely missed. I have a little bit of a insight into that. There's an email that he sent to us, and he had asked to be excused from our July meeting, which of course is one of our busiest meetings of the year. And we had to give him a hard time. We were compelled to do so. And I said, well, you know, what possibly could be more important than the SSC meeting? And he said, well, he had to go fishing. And so he had to do a bluefin trip. And of course, he said that he would certainly be attentive the whole time he was there, but couldn't count on him after that. But he did follow up with a nice validation of his excuse, and you know, just thought you might appreciate that photo of Lee in at a pretty good time. So thank you, Lee, for all your work to the SSC and to the council as well. So next slide, please. I will not be covering information that has been previously covered in other parts of the meeting thus far. So the state of the ecosystem, the forecast of species distribution, Malin-Pinsky, nothing on the ILEX ABCs, and I will not be covering the progress from the ecosystem work group. Sarah very ably summarized that topic yesterday. But I will be talking a little bit about the video monitoring project, add a little bit on the summer flounder MSE project, and then some progress by some of the working groups within the SSC. So next slide, please. Like you yesterday, you know, we very much appreciated the thoroughness of the video monitoring study and an appreciation for the exemplary work and lots of it that Jason did. One of the things that I did want to add that wasn't mentioned yesterday was that we had encouraged you know, kind of a structured subsampling program and software tools to facilitate processing and further interpretation. But on the notion of subsampling, because all of the tapes have been enumerated, you now have a nice basis for saying, okay, how can we structure something that will allow less effort, but still give you the same quality of information within certain precision targets and so forth. But, you know, felt that, you know, if studies of this nature are to become a basis for estimating effort, that this study gives you some of the real world challenges that are likely to occur when you try to possibly expand a study of this nature upwards. So it does have a nice sort of a basis for future work. So next slide, please. We were asked to comment on the summer flounder MSE project, and of course, as you know, it's basically an ecosystem of models There's a simulation model or operating model, stock dynamics. There's an assessment model that sits on top of that sort of says, okay, given what this model is putting out, we know the truth, but now let's figure out how we can interpret it with an assessment model. There's a decision model, which allows the for implementation of catch recommendations. And then finally, and importantly, there's a recreational fishing catch and effort model to simulate harvest. So how do individual fishermen respond to the condition of the resource and recreational opportunities? So that part in particular is unique in this project, and it does allow for the many things which are of interest to management in terms of factors that alter, size regulations and bag limits and season length and things of that sort. And we felt that it would also be useful for other setting other regulations for species such as black sea bass and scup. And then I think most importantly, or for the council, is that we not only strongly endorse continuation of these research efforts, but also the engagement of the many partners who have contributed ideas along the way. It's one of the worst things to do is to get strong engagement and then kind of drop the ball and not follow through. So that it's important that the constituency that has helped build this is retained in terms of future involvement. Next slide, please. Okay, the economic work group also met during our SSC meeting, and there were two parts of this. One was to sort of summarize what had been accomplished thus far, and then secondly, how are we going to move forward. So the accomplishments, of course, include the assistance with the research set-aside program, the summer flounder MSC project I just mentioned, models for recreational harvest and review of those, and then the recreational harvest control rule. Moving forward, there was just a general note that we would try to continue to match expertise and the interest of the SSC members with the council's research priorities, and we thought doing this more explicitly would be valuable. So these numbers refer to the explicit research priorities that the council has set up at their last meeting. So it involves further work on recreational measures for fluke, scup, and sea bass, becoming involved with Harvest Control Rule 2.0 as later in 2023 and into 24 as that work progresses. Also to work with the steering committee as the new RSA program progresses, that there would be likely be some work on item 45, which was essential fish habitat, and then a review of the EAFM risk assessment program. And then there's always the ongoing support for the ecosystem work group within the group. So next slide, please. In terms of other business, we have two kind of smaller committees that are sort of task oriented, not as much standing subcommittees, but one is on the topic of ABC averaging. So multi-year ABCs are problematic with respect to the risk policy because during that, the simple averaging doesn't work because of the way the risk policy is implemented. We're going to continue working with the center to implement this, and then I think it's important for as a foreshadowing, a precursor, what have you, that there are going to be some new methods coming down the pike. Most notably, state space models are going to be the new language as we progress forward. So I think not only is this an active research area, but it's also one in which, the SSC as well as the council will be, learning the alternative ways of describing the models and uncertainty and things of that nature. So it's important that we sort of start building or learning about the future. I think that's something Lee Anderson would certainly endorses. Finally, we have a working group on the guidelines for estimating the coefficient of variation for the OFL, the OFL-CV in acronym terms. But this, of course, is sort of central to setting the ABC and distilling it from the OFL. So we are sort of continuously reviewing, the consistency of our decisions, making sure that that we are not being swayed by a particular problem or whatever, and that we're consistent across species. And to that end, we strongly feel that it's important to be fully transparent on that. So we're balancing the need to get this done in plenary session, make sure that everyone knows what the basis is for this. But so in order to do that, we've been sort of in advance of the meeting setting up a template in which we say, here are the key issues associated with this, so that everyone knows what are the factors and everyone has the ability to respond to them. And then finally, one of the goals of this subgroup is to be responsive to new information, and that most notably is in the area of ecosystem factors, and how do we sort of bring those into the context of estimating risk. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I appreciate your report. Does anyone have any questions for Paul? One second, James. Let me just see if anybody raises their hand online. Anyone online? Seeing none, we have one question from the audience, Paul. James Fletcher. Come on up, James. Oh, Michelle, I'll come back to you.
Dr. Rego, James Fletcher, United National Fishermen's Association.
Morning, James.
Good morning. The ecosystem, what are the statistical possibilities that the information that you were using for the SSC is correct? We know when most of the people ignore the North Atlantic Oscillation, the solar cycles, the known cycles of climatic actions that go back thousands of years documented in sediments. What are the statistical chances that the information you're using is anywhere near correct? Thank you. James Fletcher, United National Fishermen's Association.
Well, thank you, James. It's always a kind of that's a deep epistemological question there. Of course, what is truth? I think we are certainly aware and consider some of the cyclical information associated with trends in climate. I think they're embedded in some of the long-term kinds of studies that have been done. there are many papers that have been written on the North Atlantic Oscillation as one example of cyclical behavior and its driver effect on ecosystems. The very long term implications, such as sediment core revelations in terms of either temperature profiles or say pH and things of that sort, are certainly condition some of the determinations that have been examined. But I think in terms of the shorter term thing, much of this ecosystem work is sort of tactical, in the sense that it is looking at more contemporary trends, and therefore sort of providing the shorter term guidance that is relevant on say human timescales, or the timescales of council membership and so forth. So these are on 3 to 5 year kinds of things. What's happening now, and how do we progress? But I certainly take your point that a long-term perspective is valuable, and may reduce some of the tendency in some instances to overinterpret recent conditions. So you want to make sure that you're balancing both of them.
All right, appreciate that response, Paul. I'm going to come back to the council. I've got Michelle Duvall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Rago, for the report. I was just curious, under the other business section, noted that Olaf Jensen gave a summary of a study that one of his grad students had recently published, just looking at the CV levels from different assessments around the world. And there's a sentence in there about the relative mix of commercial and recreational harvests, and the application of conversion factors to historic recreational catch data, inducing major changes in assessments. And I was curious if it sounds like there's still next steps coming from the study, but I was curious to know if Olaf and his student found any, if there was a relationship in the CVs that they found from different assessments with respect to the proportion of a fishery that consists of recreational harvest versus commercial harvest. Hopefully that makes sense, but if not, I'm happy to try again.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah, you highlight an extremely important point there. One, the study that Olaf conducted, really did highlight some of the sort of the magnitude of uncertainty that occurs across assessments around the world. And one of the take-home messages was that most of them are in the neighborhood of like 100% in terms of the variability. So rather than some of the better behaved ones that we're considering, where we have assigned a CV of 60%. So that of course may temper some of our thinking on how those CVs are assigned. The second point, an important one you mentioned, is the change in recreational harvesting, or our perception of it with the improvements to the MRIP program. And most notably, of course, is the increase associated with the transition from the telephone survey to the mail survey. And that, of course, is a big perturbation. It changes the magnitude of removals, which in turn increases the scale of the population. That, of course, means that what you thought was, a certain magnitude of say 100,000 tons is now 200,000 tons potentially. And that effect increases with the magnitude of the recreational component. So if the recreational component is extraordinarily high, like for example, in the Mid-Atlantic, it would be bluefish, it's much higher than the commercial, then its effect is greater. In contrast, where it's say a 50-50 split, such as summer flounder, the magnitude is less. But in both instances, the consequence of increasing the magnitude of the recreational component is substantial, and it does induce a fair amount of uncertainty in terms of what we think the population size is and how it should be partitioned among the users, harvester groups. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Rego.
Call me Paul, please. This kind of it makes me nervous here. When,
all right, Paul, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Paul? Any other comments from the council or the audience or the public online? Okay, seeing none, Paul, thank you very much for your report. We appreciate that, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm going to dive into the next item on the agenda under committee reports, which is the executive committee report. If you give me 1 second, pull up my notes. The executive committee met on Tuesday afternoon. We had 2 items on our agenda. The first was to review and consider the approval of recommended SSC candidates to fill the seat which Lee Anderson is just vacated. So we had a discussion. We received 5 applications for that seat. Dr. Willie Goldsmith, Dr. Desmond Kahn, Dr. Daphne Monroe, Dr. Andrew Sheld, and Dr. Jason Walsh. We went through each, and a lot of great things were said about each of the individuals who applied for the position. But in the end, the executive committee thought that given Dr. Sheld's economics background within fishery science, that he would fit most appropriately to fill Lee Anderson's position on the SSC. So the executive committee approved Dr. Andrew Sheld for that position, but I'm bringing this before you today because we need the council to also approve that recommendation from the executive committee. So as chair of the executive committee, I will make the motion on behalf of the committee. The motion is move to appoint Dr. Andrew Sheld to the Scientific and Statistical Committee. And given that this was the committee motion, there's no need for a second, but I'll look around for the council for any discussion on this. Any questions, comments? Try to get back to my screen again. Okay, seeing no hands at this time, is there any objection to the executive committee's recommendation? Is there any objection to the motion? Okay, seeing no objection, the motion carries by consent, and we'll reach out to Andrew and let him know that he'll be the next seat on the SSC. So thank you all for that, and thank you to the executive committee for that discussion. The second thing that we discussed at the executive committee was our award of excellence. We have been discussing the award of excellence over the past few years. It's been a number of years since, well, there's only been one time when the award of excellence from the council was given to an individual, which was Rick Robbins back about 2016. And so we discussed it. We still, as an executive committee, we still have a little work to do about refining and detailing a little more specifically some of the guidelines and processes for how the award of excellence nominees can be received and discussed and debated and determined by the council. However, we did receive 2 nominations for the award of excellence, and one individual was selected. And I will be reaching out to that individual to inform him of his selection by the executive committee for that award. And right now we are planning to present that award as well as the Rick C. Savage Award at our August meeting in Annapolis. So I just wanted to give the council a little background on that discussion without getting into too much detail. Are there any questions regarding the executive committee meeting, members of the council? Seeing none at this time. The next item that we have on our agenda are the organizational reports. But before I get to that, as I looked around the room today, I noticed that we have a new, it appears that we have a new member to the council family here with us. Greg, I know you're getting old, but you know, I know you might need an assistant. So I don't know if you'd like to recognize your new assistant there to your left. How you doing, Thomas? Thanks for being here. Now we all know what Greg looked like when he had hair, because I don't think any of us ever knew him when he had hair. And this council is probably one of the reasons why he doesn't have any hair. So I hope you're enjoying your time down here in North Carolina, and you got a great dad. So be good to him, and be good to your mom too. All right, they're the ones that are going to take care of you for a long time. So all right, well, welcome. So with that said, let's go back to our organization reports, and we can start with the regional office. I'll turn things over to Mike Pentney for his report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I threatened to drag this out really long since my flight wasn't until 6:30, but now I'm trying to get on a 1:15, so I'll speed things along to keep the chairman happy. Couple items to talk about. So this one didn't make our status of actions report if you follow along with that, but on April 5th, yesterday, we published a proposed rule to revise and update the vessel reporting regulations for surf, clam, and ocean quahog. These proposed changes would eliminate the separate clam logbook regs and integrate the required ITQ reporting elements into the regular commercial VTR regs. This is sort of a cleanup action from the action we took a couple of years ago based on this council and the New England Council requiring commercial vessels to report via electronic vessel trip reports rather than paper, because the clam regs were so different that it took us a while to figure out how to integrate them into the EVTR system. So this should have simplifies the regs and has minimal impact on the fishery. The comment period on the proposed rule closes on May 5th. So please take a look at that if you're interested. Moving on to dogfish, we published the 2023 proposed catch specs for dogfish on March 9th. Consistent with the recommendations of both the Mid-Atlantic and New England councils. And the comment period closed on March 24th. So we are working on getting the final rule out so that can be effective by May 1. On March 29th, we published the proposed rule for the 2023 summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass recreational measures. We talked a lot about that yesterday, at least in terms of scup, so I won't belabor that one. but the comment period on that proposed rule closes on April 14th. I think you're all aware, on March 9th, we published the final rule implementing the recreational harvest control rule recommended by the council. So we are, for 2023, moving forward, we're working under those regulations for that process for the recreational fishery. They were effective immediately. Tilefish, for those of you following along, the tilefish IFQ bills for cost recovery. The cost recovery for 2022 is $47,885 total, which is 0.7304% of the ex-vessel value. And so that's well below the 3% max allowed under the Magnuson-Stevens Act. But total costs are a little bit higher than they have been in previous years. This reflects some investments we made to improve our management system, as well as some work that we had planned but postponed due to the pandemic. So we're preparing the annual report that we provide every year that provides the additional details for the council and the industry before those bills go out. Moving on to Northeast multi-species, on March 6th, we announced approval of 9 monitoring service provider companies for fishing year 2023, which starts on May 1st. 4 companies are approved to provide human at-sea monitoring and electronic monitoring services together. And then there's an additional 5 companies that are approved for just EM, electronic monitoring service. We published the proposed rule to allow the 2023 groundfish sectors to operate. That was published on March 15th. The comment period closed on March 30th. And we are striving and fully intend to have that rule in place prior to May 1st so that vessels can keep operating. We sent a letter to councils announcing that on March 16th, we announced a preliminary determination for groundfish sectors that the human at-sea monitoring coverage target for 2023 would be 90%. It's 80% in 2022. So we're moving it up to 90%. That is preliminary though, because under the terms of the appropriations law, we have to have an approved spend plan by Congress before we can obligate any of those funds. So we're working through that process right now, but I wanted to make sure the sectors had a sense of what the coverage target was going to be. So we announced the 90% preliminary target. For scallops, we published the final rule for Framework 36, which sets the management measures for the scallop fishing year, which began April 1st. That published on April 3rd, but it filed before the end of March, so it was effective on April 1st. On March 23rd, we published interim final rule implementing the 2023-2025 herring specs. It's an interim final rule, which means it's effective, but we are taking comment, so the comment period closes on April 24th, if anybody wants to comment on that. And effective April 1st, we suspended the herring industry-funded monitoring program for the herring vessels, basically due to a lack of available funding to fund our shoreside component of that program. 2 more items real quick. On March 10th, we published a 30-day notice of funding opportunity for the monkfish research set-aside program. So anybody who's interested, you've got till April 10th to get a proposal in for that. We intend to do a quick review as soon as possible and make awards in May. And then we also announced recently that there were 13 projects selected under the 2023 to 2024 scallop research set-aside program. So those were projects selected based on priorities developed by the New England Council. And the awards will generate approximately $20 million, $4 million for research, and $16 million in compensation for industry partners. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, but happy to take questions.
All right, thanks, Mike. Are there any questions for Mike? Tim?
Yes, thank you. On your cost recovery figures, was that just the Mid-Atlantic, and how many vessels is that approximately?
It is just the Mid-Atlantic ITQ permit holders or ITQ holders for the golden tilefish. And I don't have the number of vessels specifically in front of me.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Dewey?
I know I've asked you this question before a few years ago, but I'm going to ask it again and hopefully I can be more specific. The fact that you have one has a South Atlantic permit and has a Garfo permit, and you got a dual report, and the fish you're catching are not in the Mid-Atlantic or not managed by the Mid-Atlantic. What is the purpose of having the dual report to the Mid-Atlantic just because you have a tile other permits? I'm trying to get, because I've had fishermen call me recently and I've had to help a few of them out who are not savvy enough on a computer to where I've done their BTRs online for them. And I'm just trying to figure out what the purpose, I know it's a regulation, but what is the purpose of it if it has nothing to do with the Mid-Atlantic, the species that are managed or caught in the South Atlantic? Why do you got to go produce two different reports? And what's the futility in that when the Mid-Atlantic has nothing to do, or Garfo has nothing to do with that species or management or anything that's caught? And I know you told me before, and I probably didn't like your answer, and I'm probably not gonna like this one, but I just wondering.
So there's two aspects to that question. The first has to do with filling out two different reports. I think we've talked to the council and provided updates, although we'd certainly be happy to do so again. We are moving and making, I think, substantial progress to having a single one report, fill out one electronic vessel trip report, and all the information just goes where it needs to go. So that eliminates part of the problem issue. The underlying requirement is a universal requirement. If you have a Northeast fishing permit for any fishery managed by the New England Council or Mid-Atlantic Council, the regulations state that every fishing trip that you take, you have to complete a vessel trip report. And that's just a universal requirement across all of our Northeast permits. So that where that comes into play, as you're describing, is you've got one of these Northeast permits, you've also got a Southeast permit. Just so happens that the trip you take, you're only landing Southeast managed fish. Why do you still have to have a Northeast vessel trip report? And the only answer I can give you is not going to be satisfying, but it's because the regulations require that every trip you take with a permit, if you have that permit, as a condition of that permit, every trip you take, you fill out a vessel trip report.
How does that get rescinded? Is it from a council or some other type of thing to get rescinded? Because the way I look at it, the Paper Reduction Act, just common sense, everything around there is reeking with, it shouldn't be there. And so I'm wondering, how does it get rescinded, or does it? What's the steps needed or that needed to be done to rescind that?
Yeah, I mean, without getting into the philosophical arguments which I could make or the legal theory behind it, I'd be happy to debate it some other time. I mean, the process would start with the councils. I think if both councils came to start to develop actions to say we're going to rescind this requirement that all trips have to be supported by a vessel trip report, then that would be the council process. I'm not sure how supportive I'd be of that, but I think that would be the process.
Thank you. We can have other discussions at some other time. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just add too, maybe a question for Mike. So it is kind of a race too. I mean, we've got the issue, but we're also, as you mentioned, they're working on a mechanism to have a one-stop kind of shop for reporting. So which one's going to get there first? And then I guess there are other consequences to removing the requirement in the Northeast, just because it wouldn't just be for someone landing South Atlantic fish. It would be everybody, right? I mean, it would have to be it would be all fishermen would not be required to submit a VTR on any trip they took. So I think there'd be some consequences to that.
I'm not gonna debate that part, but I would think fishermen that fish in that region that catch the fish that's managed by that particular council or GARFO region would have to report VTRs. And so hopefully, I've been working on this it's been a pain in my butt for about 6-7 years now. I can remember reaching out to Jim Sensei and a few different ones about it, but hopefully, it'll get there in the near future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dewey. Let's hope so. All right, any other questions for Mike? Okay, thanks, Mike, for your report. Okay, we'll go. We'll see what comes out of your mouth. Let's see what you got.
So I'm just, it's really confusing to me because I just went through all of this, and it just seems like when I file a EVTR and I have South Atlantic permits and I have Northeast permits, and now it's like when I do it, it goes to the Southeast, it goes to the Northeast, and it goes to my state. So what's the confusion here is what I'm trying to wrap my mind around.
I would say, don't wrap your mind around it, just do it, and they're still working on it. That's the short answer.
Yeah, I think the point is if it's working, whatever is working for you, make it work.
And just one more comment, just even with, as I'm talking to Dewey, that the no fishing for the Southeast where you had to send a paper in, I've called them up and I went right on my telephone and did that. I put the no fishing in my telephone, and everything seemed to make me happy as a tick on a hound dog on a hot August day. But I'm confused with this conversation as what Dewey's saying is there's still some problems with it, except for my state, who still requires me to send a no fishing report in paperwork, but they take my EVTR too. So it's like when I punch that in to submit, everybody's getting the data as I expected. But this conversation is kind of confusing me.
Yeah, I mean, I think what that relates to is the one-stop shop reporting is a work in progress. And I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but I feel like we've got probably 75 to 80% of the dual permit holders already covered through a one-stop shop reporting system. But there are a few different, the South Zero has a number of different permit systems and reporting systems under their permits. And so some of those reporting systems we've incorporated through our one-stop reporting system. So that's where you are. But there are some fishermen, and Dewey's probably talking with some, that are subject to some of the other reporting systems that Zero has, and those aren't yet covered through the one-stop reporting. So for those fishermen, I think there's only a couple handful, honestly, but they still have to do 2 different reports until we bring those reporting systems of Zero into the one-stop reporting. It was just basically kind of like we triaged the reporting systems of Zero that have the most fishermen, the most dual permits. We worked on those first. We work with ACCSP to try to incorporate the states as much as possible. And now we're doing the cleanup to try to bring in those other systems.
All right, thank you, Mike, and thank you for your report. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Science Center report. Dr. John Hare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Following Dr. Rago's comment, please call me John. So survey updates. I hope that many of you, I hope that all of you know, are.
John, can you move the mic a little closer to you?
Thank you. I hope that all of you know that our spring bottom trawl survey is delayed. We've been sort of trying to make sure we're reaching the people that need to know. So sending out the announcements. If you don't know that, please let me know, and we'll make sure that we are providing the information so that you get it when you need it. I'm supposed to sail on March 15th. Current sail date is looking like April 15th. They're working hard to resolve some issues in the yard now. We will need to drop stations in the southern part of the survey area and then decrease sampling density for stations, throughout the sampling area to make up for the lost time. I think it's clear if you look at the wind energy development in the Northeast Shelf, we're going to need to make changes to our bottom trawl survey. And that's, we've developed our survey mitigation strategy with Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to make those changes, set up a process for making those changes. Wind energy development is going to affect 14 of our surveys in the Northeast. So we're going to be, making changes to a number of surveys. In thinking about the bottom trawl survey specifically, as we are contemplating what changes to make to the survey because of wind energy development, we also need to make sure that we're building in the contingency plans for Bigelow if we encounter similar maintenance issues in the future. So at the Science Center, we'll be working to try to address both of those issues as part of this survey mitigation strategy that we're working on now. And we fully intend to involve the council and communicate our progress to the council. On other sort of survey news, we also had a coastal shark longline survey scheduled for this year. That runs every 2 to 3 years. We needed to cancel it for this year, and we'll then plan to do it next year because of some issues that came up with the crew and the captain, the crew, and the vessel. It wasn't available this year. Our scallop, shrimp, clam, the shark surveys in the pumping grounds in Delaware Bay, Coast Span will be going on this year. So we've got a lot of survey work ahead of us. Talking about the survey mitigation program for wind energy, just a few developments there. We are developing a miniature HabCam that will be on an autonomous underwater vehicle. We're doing that work with Hui, and we're doing the first sea trials of that this summer. And so that would take us away from using a towed HabCam behind the Sharp with the intent of being able to work in the wind energy areas with this AUV. We're also starting to talk about some kind of hook and line survey, which could be used in wind energy areas. And our cooperative research branch is taking the lead there. And they've developed, there's just a very rough first draft on what that type of survey could look like. So we're looking at sort of modifying our existing surveys and potentially bringing new survey methods to the region. There's also an intersection with the Northeast Trawl Advisory Panel and a lot of the survey work that we're doing with wind energy development. And so we will continue to work with the NTAP, continue to inform them and use their expertise as we sort of work through these changes to our surveys. On observers, the observer program is now caught up in terms of their the data quality sort of reviewing of the observer data. It took us a while to get there, but we are finally caught up, and we are now meeting the 90-day schedule for finalizing data in all fisheries. So just a lot of credit out to the observer program for they had coming, basically it was the aftermath of the waivers in 2020 and the downstream effects of that. And so, they're finally sort of out of the weeds on that and caught up in terms of getting observer data into the system in a timely manner. We've also been working with the U.S. Coast Guard, thank you very much, in terms of they've been attending our observer training sessions to just further develop the working relationship between Coast Guard and the observers. Nicole Cabana, Deputy Director, and myself have also been attending every one of those trainings to emphasize the importance of partnerships, of working well with captains and crews as a way to be successful observer. And we will continue to do that to make sure that that message gets through. And the observer program is also on track to meet most of the tasks, sea days, through the standardized bycatch reporting methodology system. And then they'll start that over again in April. In terms of assessments, We continue to do our assessments, but there are continue to be challenges. Our primary challenge is staff capacity. We've needed to delay some assessments because of staff capacity. We've extended some research track assessments. We're trying to work through some scheduling issues for 2023. We have approved the hire of 4 additional stock assessment scientists, and that process is moving forward. They have the list, they've done their interviews, and then they're be making decisions and approving those hires. So we do see sort of adding this capacity as a way to address the problems that we've seen over the past year, and hope to be by the next meeting able to talk about new individuals that are coming to join the Science Center. Just running through some of the assessments. The black sea bass research track will be peer reviewed in October of 2023. And we are working with the NRCC to determine when the spiny dogfish management track peer review will be conducted. We appreciate the MID's willingness to work with us on that. And we have recently formed the research track steering committee to oversee all of the research track assessments. And we have a number going on now. In terms of cooperative research, thank you all who participated in the cooperative research summits earlier this year. They're a huge success, and we're taking priorities from those and working them into our cooperative research program. Gulf of Maine bottom longline survey is on schedule, and they'll be starting to go out and working in the Gulf of Maine. It's a spring and fall survey paired up with the bottom trawl survey. And then short fin squid research, there are some new publications coming out that hopefully I'll be able to talk about at the next meeting. And then we were able to sign 5 new vessels to the study fleet. So that study fleet program it continues to grow, and the data is working on methods and including those data from the study fleet into assessment. So a lot of progress there. In terms of protected species, the decision support tool, which is used to support the Atlantic large whale take reduction team and the difficult decisions that need to be made around right whales and entanglement. That tool was peer reviewed, and the Science Center is currently working on the response to the peer review. And that response will be made publicly available in the next several weeks to month. And then we'll work on making the improvements to the tool to then inform the next actions by the Atlantic large whale take reduction team. In terms of the development of the on-demand gear, the geolocation to reduce gear conflict and trials with mobile and fishing gear fishermen, a lot of work is going on there. We're presently trialing fully ropeless on-demand gear in Massachusetts and in some of the restricted areas to assess the ability to see both the gear using the geolocation techniques that are being developed and to assess the performance of that gear in terms of recoveries. And we expect a lot more activity in that area on the ropeless development as we put in a working relationship with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. In the FY23 omnibus budget, there is a $20 million supplemental which asked us to work with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to support gear development and technology to address the entanglement problem with right whales. So there'll be a lot more activity in that area in the coming months and coming years. In terms of the wind efforts, the synthesis of the science report was finalized. I think we heard about that earlier in this meeting. A huge effort led by Responsible Offshore Development Association. So a lot of credit goes out to Annie Hawkins and her group for leading that effort. BOEM was involved, NOAA Fisheries was involved, really collaborative effort. And that report really lays out what information is available and where the gaps are. And NOAA Fisheries will be using that as we sort of move forward in terms of survey mitigation, but also move forward in terms of understanding the effects of offshore wind development on the Northeast U.S. shelf ecosystem. In terms of the ecosystem-based fisheries management updates, we heard from Sarah Geichus yesterday on the state of the ecosystem support report. We'll continue to supporting that. And in that report, we heard a little bit about the ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles that are being developed as part of the research track assessment process. It's working on that for Atlantic cod. And also it was in the bluefish research track and will be part of the black sea bass research track. So we are looking for feedback in terms of how useful that sort of new addition to the assessment process is from the council. And then lastly, we heard also from Kylie about the East Coast Climate Change Scenario Planning Initiative, and the Science Center is looking forward to seeing the report from that group at the next NRCC meeting and then supporting those efforts as we go forward. So that's my report, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, John. Appreciate your report and the information in it. Are there any questions, comments, anything you want to ask of John? Anyone from the council? Sonny?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this question is for Paul or just maybe somebody could relay it, but when all the deaths of the humpbacks and then now the porpoises up north washing up on the beach, has there been any kind of update on what's happening to them, or or just I don't know if he can answer that question, but.
I mean, it's a similar question asked at the last council, and to date, there's no evidence linking offshore wind development to these strandings. And what we do know, at least for the humpback whales and the large whales, is that where a cause can be attributed, it's vessel strike. The dolphins are a separate issue. I don't know. I haven't seen the reports of the necropsies from the dolphins yet, and I can certainly look into that and provide information back to Chris. But where there is a attributable cause, it's vessel strike.
All right, thanks, Sonny. Skip?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if you have any information on this. I heard that there was a comment period coming up about the Navy being exempt from the speed limit. Did you have any information on that or know anything on that?
I don't have any information on that, but I can ask and get back to the council on that. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Excuse me. Okay, seeing none, let me go to the audience quickly. I have Julie Evans online. Julie?
Yes, Julie Evans, East Hampton Town Fisheries Advisory Committee. I was wondering where I could find the Rotary.
I can share the link with the council. And are you on the council mailing list?
I'm on the email list.
Okay, yeah, I'll share the link to the report so everyone on the council can get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that. We'll get that up if it's not already up there on the website. Anyone else? Questions for John? All right, seeing none. John, thank you for your report. And go ahead and move on to the next report. We have the Office of General Counsel. John Almeida is participating with us virtually. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay, Mike?
We can. Go for it.
All right, great. Thank you. The first case I'm going to talk about, Lofstad v. Raimondo. This case was filed in December by two commercial fishermen in the District of New Jersey challenging this council's recent recreational commercial allocation amendment to the Summer Flounder Scup Black Sea Bass FMP. In that case, the plaintiffs claim that the council process violates the Constitution's appointments clause. And since our last meeting, NIMFS has filed the administrative record, and the parties have submitted a proposed briefing schedule, which would have the case fully briefed by the end of July. And the court has set a scheduling conference for April 27th, where I imagine those kind of issues will be resolved in terms of scheduling the filing of briefs and whatnot. Another case of interest to the council, the state of New York's challenge to the summer flounder state commercial allocation amendment. You may recall that NIMS won in the district court, and New York has filed an appeal to the Second Circuit. At this point, the appeal is fully briefed, and the court has scheduled oral argument for May 24th. With right whale litigation, the most recent case that was filed by the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association, you may recall this case was filed in the District of Columbia, and it was challenging an emergency rule that closed a wedge area between the Massachusetts state waters closure area and the federal closure area for this year from February to mid-May. The court had a hearing on February 16th, at which point the plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order was denied. This week, NIMS filed a motion to dismiss the case on mootness grounds in light of the fact that the rule will be expiring at the end of April. We'll see, the parties get to respond to that motion, and we'll see, where it goes after that. Another case in the District of Columbia, the Maine Lobstermen's Association case, and you may recall that was a challenge to the fisheries biological opinion, and that was brought by, this case was also before Judge Boasberg, the judge who's been handling a lot of this right whale litigation. You may recall that the district court ruled in favor of NIMS in September of 22, and the Maine Lobstermen's Association has appealed that decision to the DC Circuit. The appeal is fully briefed, and oral argument was held February 24th of this year. We are just waiting for a decision on that appeal. And then the last cases I'll talk about are the lawsuits that are challenging New England Council's industry-funded monitoring amendment. The first case, Loper Bright Fisheries, that was a case that was filed in the District of Columbia. The district court ruled in favor of NIMS, as did the DC Circuit on appeal. And at this point, the plaintiffs in the case have petitioned the Supreme Court for review. We don't know yet if that's going to happen. The Supreme Court hasn't decided one way or the other, so we're just waiting on that. And then the second industry challenge to the same amendment, Relentless Incorporated. This one was filed in the District of Rhode Island, and NIMS got a favorable decision in the district court, and that decision was appealed to the First Circuit. And on March 16th, the First Circuit affirmed the district court decision. So NIMS got a good decision there as well. That's all I have for my report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thanks, John, for your report. Does anyone have any questions for John? Anyone around the table? How about online? Are there any questions for John? Anyone from the audience? All right, John, you're off the hook. Thank you for your report. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Moving on, we're going to go to NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement. Caleb Gilbert's with us. And Caleb, if you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, council members. Related to our continued enforcement priorities within NED, the Northeast Division, there are some right whale and observer related priority highlights I'd like to share this morning. First, I'd like to mention that OLE's FY23 to FY27 enforcement priorities went out for public comment. We're accepting comments on those through April 17th. I'm not sure how interested folks are here in seeing those and providing comments, but if anyone's interested in seeing those and commenting, please reach out to me and I can provide that information. Related to right whales and Atlantic large whale take reduction plan compliance, we don't have updated patrols and compliance stats for Q2 FY23 as we've provided for past meetings, but I realize that is largely a Northeast-based effort. We will be able to report out on those in our Q2 OLE written report that will be available to the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council at the next meeting in June. Regarding patrols and operations, a number of our right whale priority focused patrols in the Q2 FY23 covered both Altwerp and SMA speed rule compliance. The big ones are as follows. I mentioned our January speed rule op in Delaware Bay at the last council meeting. Some more detail, enforcement officers and special agents during that op focused on speed enforcement in the Delaware Bay Seasonal Management Area alongside Delaware Natural Resource Police, U.S. Coast Guard D5, and New Jersey Department of Environmental Police. A total of 22 vessels were observed and no violations were identified during that op. Also in January, in response to a large aggregation of right whales that began congregating in Massachusetts Bay and Cape Cod Bay at the time, OLE participated in numerous patrols in those areas alongside Mass Environmental Police and U.S. Coast Guard D1 partners. In addition to the whale aggregations coinciding with the Cape Cod Bay Seasonal Management Area, the emergency rule for the wedge closer that Attorney Almeida just mentioned went into effect on February 1, as he said. And a similar emergency rule went into place last year for the same area off Boston to help protect the idea of the wedge area is to protect North Atlantic right whales from vertical lines in the lobster fishery. Thus, patrols in these waters at the time targeted compliance with wedge-related regulations as well as seasonal management area and other restricted gear area regulations in the vicinity. In the beginning of March, a senior enforcement officer, 3 enforcement officers, U.S. Coast Guard D5, and Virginia Marine Resources Police conducted a 3-day right whale speed op in the Chesapeake Bay SMA. Speeds were checked on approximately 32 vessels, and all speeds checked were in compliance. And throughout all of these patrols and investigations, I should mention, our investigative support team helped prepare and inform sworn staff participating in these operations by providing whale and vessel locations within the SMA closures at the time. In addition, outside, just routinely throughout their normal operations, investigative support teams sent out real-time vessel monitoring system alerts on numerous occasions to vessels identified in close proximity to right whales in and outside SMAs. Obviously, only vessels equipped with VMS could be identified in that regard, but we were doing our best to be proactive. And all of these details will be more carefully outlined and described in the Q2 written report, OLE report when it's available. Related to case processing and speed enforcement, I want to touch on that today. Sworn staff are now working on the calendar year 22-23 seasonal management area violations. The last tally I heard related to the previous year 21-22 SMA season regarding violations and case processing is that we've assessed over $600,000 in penalties across 44 cases. There might be a few lingering, but we're pretty much close to moving on towards prosecutions just in the current season. And many of those cases, I'm not sure if I've mentioned before, involve recreational pleasure craft. One related case, for instance, was assessed at $75,000 and involves 10 counts of SMA speed rule violations. I realize questions were raised at the last council meeting related to OLE providing a breakdown of identified speed ruled cases by vessel type or category. Now the casework for the last SMA season is complete or nearly complete. We will work on compiling more detailed information from that season, hopefully for in advance of the June council meeting. And regarding violations among recreational pleasure craft, we're actively developing a compliance assistance strategy to better accompany related casework to help curb the number of violations committed by that vessel type. I thought I'd just mention that today in case folks have any ideas. We're open to suggestions that anyone might have to help aid us in that effort. Moving on, I won't go into specific details, but OLE sworn staff have responded to numerous whale and dolphin strandings along the mid-Atlantic coast in the second quarter FY23, as we've touched on already today. At stranding events, our staff provided the general public and with outreach and communications at these events, general compliance assistance information, and also security. At these events, our staff have worked in close collaboration with local and state authorities and even our federal partners, such as the National Park Service from Virginia up through New York. Moving on to our observer priority in the last quarter, I reported the conclusion of the last round of our sexual assault, sexual harassment related training workshops in mid-January at the February council meeting. Our law enforcement work continues to address SASH-related cases, and the topic was a focus point at this year's OLE NED annual in-service training held last week. In addition, in the first week of February, our observer program liaison provided training to a new class of observers for the January-February 23 base Northeast Fishery Observer Program training. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the training consists of both, from our end, for both a presentation to observer new recruits and participation in a panel discussion, in part to discuss observer-related enforcement issues. Last, both our observer program liaison and I worked together following up on requests from the Northeast Fisheries Science Center Fisheries Monitoring Operations Division on targeted compliance assistance with specific members of the fishing community in specific areas of interest. Moving on from our two top priorities, SIMP and IUU enforcement basically combined to form a third NED enforcement priority. Related to that work, NED and EOs and special agents led up to a two-day multi-agency operation at the Calais, Maine port of entry in the middle of March. There we worked jointly with U.S. Customs Border Patrol, Maine Marine Patrol, U.S. Coast Guard, D1 partners. A total of 14 reefer trailers were inspected. Investigations from that effort are ongoing, such as two in which importers failed to submit accurate reporting data and maintain records as required under SIMP. Also related to SIMP, earlier in the quarter, a SIMP case was settled involving Grand Sea Boston for $18,675 penalty, and we'll have actually a NOAA Fisheries web story forthcoming with more details on that case. Outside of our core priorities, we continue to work on enforcement. For instance, we've completed work recently on a bluefin tuna fishery related case. An enforcement officer recently completed an investigation involving a subject's failure to report Atlantic bluefin tuna. Subject never reported fish despite being provided compliance assistance previously. Case was forwarded to General Counsel Enforcement Section for prosecution, and charges included failure to report 169 fish, as well as falsifying identifiable information on their HMS permits. And the last point I'll mention today relates to the recreational blue line tile fish enforcement. As I know that came up at the last council meeting. We're working on ongoing rec blue line tile fish permitting and reporting non-compliance. And I'll mention one case recently did close involving blue line tile fish possession by a rec vessel without a federal private angler permit. That's all I have today, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions if folks have them.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. Appreciate your report and the information that you presented to the council. Are there any questions for Caleb? Dewey.
Yeah, for your blue line tile fish compliance and educational outreach and compliance assistance, how do you feel like you're going to get a better hand or better idea on that? Some of my thoughts was to go on social media and track it down from there and then ask for compliance assistance. Most time I wouldn't say compliance assistance, but I know that's the popular word is, to get people to comply first and and then go from there. But social media is a valuable tool that can do your work for you. But it takes a person to go on the dock afterwards to do a follow-up, probably phone calls or something like that. But I would think the best bang for the buck is a social media look through, and then go and then by telephone calls or tracking somebody down. That way you don't have to put a person at the dock at the time for future. And then once that starts to get heard of out there, then maybe we'll get people, there's over 900 vessels that's got permits, and we're probably, I don't know, less than 25 or something reporting something. But yet you can go on social media and count the numbers. So just wondering if y'all could use that aspect to do a lot of further catch up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dewey. I think that's great feedback. I think you mentioned something similar the last time you made comments. So yeah, I know I passed that information along. I can say that Office of Law Enforcement uses any and all resources available to handle a case. We're resource limited. There's, and it's, blue line tilefish regretfully isn't in our top priority. So but there is casework happening. That's why I wanted to report that today. So where we can work on blue line tilefish related noncompliance, we're doing it.
And maybe highlight that in some of the stories, if you have examples when it comes out of.
Yeah, no, I'd like to, as more cases close out, I can't comment on active investigations, but I would be happy to report if there's more cases that have closed by the time the next council convenes. I'll happily report on those.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Any other comments? Anyone that's participating online or in the room as a member of the public? Okay, seeing none. Caleb, thank you for your report.
My pleasure.
All right, we're going to move on to our last organizational report. We have the U.S. Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander Matt Cayley.
Hey, morning,
Whenever you're
Mr.
ready.
And thank you. Yeah, from the Coast Guard over the past 2 months, we've conducted about 44 fishery boardings. It's a little less than what we did last year. This is largely due to some of the different mission demands that we've had over the past 2 months. We've had the high altitude balloon incident off of South Carolina that's in February that sucked up some of our cutters in the response there, and then also the migrant surge off the coast of southern Florida continues to be a resource challenge there, where we've been supporting with some of our cutters in the district down there to support the migrant ops. Of the 44 boardings that we did do, we had we issued 3 enforcement action reports. 2 were from the cutter Angela McShann up in New Jersey for 2 vessels that were commercial fishing. They were in possession of undersized black sea bass on board. We also the cutter Steelhead that's in North Carolina. They issued an enforcement action report for a charter fishing vessel that was targeting dolphin wahoo with no federal fishery permit on board. On the marine protected species front, the Richard Snyder that's out of North Carolina, the cutter, they work closely with the North Carolina aquariums and the Sea Turtle Rescue and Rehabilitation Center to safely return 70 turtles that were found cold stunned, mostly in North Carolina estuarine waters to the Atlantic Ocean. Some of the operations that we've done the past 2 months, we have Operate Speed that's enforcing the seasonal management area for the right whales for vessels that are 65 feet and greater. We've done hail outs. We've done about 21 since it started. And some of those hail outs for folks that are violating the restrictions, they've mostly been on deep drafts, kind of a mix between foreign and domestic. We've also had a tug or 2 and some pleasure crafts in that, but we'll continue to do that for the remainder of April until the management area is no longer in effect. And then the one that Caleb highlighted there with the joint op that we did for the right whale speed enforcement in Virginia. Over the past 2 weeks, we've also been engaged in an IUU operation for looking at some foreign flag fishing fleets that were operating on the high seas. These vessels operate under the ICAT, which is a regional fishery management organization that oversees kind of the HMS fishing in the Western Atlantic. And we go out there for make sure that there's no incursions from our EEZ but also to take a look and do some sightings of the vessels that are out there. So I'll have more on that in our next report, since we're still wrapping that up. On the commercial fishing vessel safety efforts, our examiners, they conducted a little over 75 dockside exams. They issued about 60 decals, and they did have one termination of a commercial fishing vessel. Their voyage was terminated, one to note. On the search and rescue front, we had one case, the fishing vessel Instigator. They ran aground in the vicinity of Ocean City, Maryland inlet. They were returning from a fishing trip. They were eventually floated and got off the shoaling with no damage reported. They were able to continue on to the mooring area. And then the one termination that we had was for the fishing vessel, Miss Mary Ann. They were boarded and they were terminated. Their voyage was terminated due to lack of flotation devices and survival suits that were on board. And our examiner was able to go out the next day and do an inspection and clear the discrepancies there to get back underway. And then our outreach that we've been doing for the commercial fishing vessel safety folks, they continue to do dock walks and training and educational efforts, especially as the spring season kind of kicks up. They also participated in the Atlantic City, New Jersey Boat Show, a large amount of attendees there. And then our examiners continue to conduct training throughout our District 5 units in preparations for kind of the boating season as we get into full swing on that side. So with that, I'll take any questions, but that concludes our portion of the briefing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you for your report. I was pretty close to the issue in Ocean City. Our office, the phone lines were ringing. And I'm trying to think about how to say this. I'd like to hear what you have to say about damages to the vessel if you call Mike Copa about it. And I know some of the guys around the table here know Mike. There were some damages, but it's an issue that we're going to have to deal with. And I don't know what, the Coast Guard's not involved in the dredging operations, but I feel like it's going to happen more and more, given the shoaling issue. And, we're trying to figure out a way around it. But for the fishermen, for the commercial guys at least, that have the large vessels in Ocean City, it's really a challenge. Sonny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on that. Vessel ran aground. There has been a study. Actually, there's been 2 studies of Ocean City Inlet. And the last study, they have something, they're going to fix it. But due to the fact that we don't have enough commercial landings in our inlet, we can't get the work done. So the boats can't come in to make the money to give us the economic value to dredge the inlet. So they're not going to do the project.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Wes Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Caleb, is there a possibility, I want to try and get ahead of this a little bit. We've done it before where we couldn't get in the inlet and we were able to tie up along the Coast Guard wall in Ocean City and then move the fish over with a little boat to the dock. Can we try and get something maybe possibly going again for that? Last time it was a nightmare, but nobody on the boat is going to get off and get on the Coast Guard property. We're just to tie up to get the fish off.
I would say on that front, it's something we could certainly look at and be receptive to if we've done it in the past. I can't speak specifically as to, we have to look at the different operations that are going on at the unit at the time to see if there's any conflicts there. But I'd say if we've done it in the past, I'd say we'd certainly be open to it if there's a way to, avoid, we're always trying to be conscious of the safety aspects and trying to make sure folks are safe. So probably not a direct answer as a yes or no, but it's something that, I would say that we would take a look at. And you're talking specifically on Ocean City or Indian River?
No, definitely Ocean City.
Ocean City.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you want to link up after this, we can chat and I can try to at least.
Maybe just get the ball started if nothing else.
Sure. Yeah, we can. Yeah, I'll have to reach out to the local unit up there and have a little further discussion with them on kind of what their operations look like in the tempo and look for scheduling and things like that. But
all right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the Coast Guard presentation? Anyone that's participating online or the public that's here? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Matt, for your presentation. We're going to move on to the last item on our agenda for today, which are the liaison reports. I was informed this morning that there is no New England report. The New England Council meeting is in maybe 2 weeks. So we'll get a report from actions that took place at that meeting, at our June council meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to the South Atlantic Council. We'll start with Dewey to see if there's a report. Dewey?
Yeah, very quickly, I'll read over the summary that's also in your briefing book. The South Atlantic Council met in March the 6th to 10th in Jekyll Island, Georgia. Numerous discussions and summaries within a commercial electronic logbook amendment that's being developed jointly with the Gulf Council. Snapper grouper amendment and projects, particularly the red snapper, discard mortality, and regulatory amendment 35 was passed and will be moved on to CRO, which has a couple of items in that amendment. Amendment 53, gag and black grouper proposes establishing a rebuilding plan and adjusting catch level for gag in response to the most recent CDR 71 stock assessment. Also, the council is conducting a management strategy evaluation to explore long-term management strategies for the South Atlantic snapper grouper fishery. And they're also using an outside group that helped with it called Blue Matter Science. Private recreational reporting amendment 46 is in development, considering the establishment of private recreational permitting education, the snapper grouper fishery. Amendment 55, scamp and yellowmouth grouper. Staff presented results of CDR 68 for scamp and yellowmouth grouper, and the council directed staff to initiate work on the amendment. Recfish review of ITQ program was completed in 2019. Amendment 48 for Recfish, and they're looking at going to maybe potential cost recovery, but also from moving away from paper coupons that they have developed. Spanish mackerel, the council expressed frustration with the South Atlantic Spanish mackerel assessment CDR 78, and that's been going back to the SSC, which will be discussion at their April 2023 meeting, either with updated assessment or using a data limited approach. Council received a letter from Southeast Fishery Science Center stated the revisions of CDR 78 requested by the SSC in January are exploratory in nature and require extensive work. Council also discussed adding Spanish mackerel research track assessment to the schedule. Those port meetings that were in December of 2022, the council directed staff to have port meetings for king and Spanish mackerel to aid in revising the goals and objective of CMP FMPs. And so port meetings were held, and there was a habitat project the council set out to reinstate and evaluate its goals, objectives, and pertaining to essential fish habitat in the South Atlantic. And the essential fish habitat policy and a 5-year review is being undertaken. And with that, that's my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dewey. Before I go to questions, I'll ask Tim if there's anything you may want to address that wasn't picked up in Dewey's report before we go to questions.
No, I think Dewey covered everything. I do think it's important that if any of your people are involved in the Spanish mackerel fishery, that these port meetings are going to be important. So I would try to attend them if at all possible.
Okay, will do. Questions for Dewey or Tim? Michelle Duval?
Yeah, do either of you know like when that scheduled port meetings is supposed to be published?
I don't.
No worries, I'm sure a notice will come out. Thanks.
Chris?
I know they're working on it now, so it'll probably be soon.
Okay. That was your question, Chris? Okay, excellent. Anyone else around the table? Skip?
Is that charter and commercial or both or?
Anyone else? Any other questions? Anyone from the audience? Anyone online? Okay, seeing none. Dewey, Tim, thank you for your report. That takes us to the last item on our agenda, which is other and continuing business. Is there any new and/or continuing business to come before the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and thank everyone for your participation this week and safe travels home. I know some of you haven't been home for quite a while. I think it's been a couple weeks for Dewey, so I'm sure you're looking forward to getting home, getting on the couch and relaxing a little bit. So thanks everyone. Safe travels home. I do want to make the point, so our next council meeting is in Virginia Beach in June. It just so happens that my firstborn, my little baby girl, who's not a baby girl anymore, is graduating from high school. That same, the ceremony is the Tuesday night of that council meeting week. And so I'm going to do my best to get down there for Wednesday and Thursday, but there's no way I'm going to be, I won't have a home to live in anymore. I'll be knocking on all your doors looking for places to sleep throughout the Mid-Atlantic if I don't go to my daughter's graduation ceremony. So I think that's hopefully excusable, and I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you. If something were to come up and I can't make it, I'll work with Wes and Chris, and we'll come up with a strategy on how to navigate through that meeting. So safe travels home. This meeting is now adjourned.